How does a company make $1 trillion without selling a single product? Warren Buffett knows. He's the chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, a company that owns a piece of almost everything you touch today: your phone, your car, the insurance on both of them. And they do it all with just 27 employees and a strategy so simple it should be common sense. No factories, no products, just buying the right businesses and never letting go, funded by an insurance scheme that feels illegal. But to truly understand Berkshire's business model and how it makes so much fucking money, first we have to look how Berkshire came to be.
Warren Buffett was born in 1930 in Omaha, Nebraska. His dad was a stockbroker. His mom was, by his own account, difficult. And Warren, from about age 6, seemed to understand something most adults never figure out. You have to spend money to make money. At 6, he bought 6 packs of Coca-Cola for 25 cents and resold individual cans for a nickel each. Pure profit. At 11, he bought his first stock, 3 shares of Cities Service Preferred at $38.25 a share. At 13, he was filing his own tax return, writing off his bicycle as a business expense because he used it to deliver newspapers. By the time he was 15, he had saved $2,000, that's about $30,000 in today's money, from paper routes, selling golf balls, and running pinball machines he'd placed in barbershops around Omaha. Compare this to you in your 20s, yelling at kids on Valorant in your mom's basement. Warren was obsessed not just with making money, but with keeping it. He hated waste. He lived frugally. When he finally became a billionaire, he was still living in the same Omaha house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. He read everything, literally. His biographer, Alice Schroeder, estimated he spent 80% of his working life reading. Annual reports, newspapers, trade journals, filings. He says he reads 500 pages a day. And from all that reading, he internalized one idea that would become the foundation of everything. Buy something worth more than what you pay for it, and be patient. He called it finding dollar bills selling for 50 cents. He studied under Benjamin Graham, the godfather of value investing, at Columbia Business School. Graham taught him to treat stocks not as lottery tickets, but as fractional ownership of real businesses. That sounds obvious. It is not. Most of Wall Street still hasn't learned it. But Buffett was going to need more than theory. He was going to need a vehicle. And that vehicle came from the most unlikely place: a failing textile mill in Massachusetts.
Buffett didn't found Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway was originally 2 separate textile companies, Berkshire Fine Spinning and Hathaway Manufacturing, that merged in 1955. By the early 1960s, they were bleeding. The American textile industry was being gutted by cheaper foreign competition. Mills across New England were closing. Berkshire was no different. So why did Warren Buffett buy it? Spite. This is genuinely one of the best fucking stories in business history. It's 1962. Buffett has been quietly buying shares of Berkshire because, even as a dying business, it was trading below its book value. The company kept closing mills and using the cash to buy back shares. Every time they closed a mill, Buffett made money on the buyback. It was a pure value play. He had a gentleman's agreement with the CEO at the time, a man named Seabury Stanton, that Berkshire would buy back Buffett's shares at a fair price. Buffett expected around $11.50 per share. When the offer came in writing, it was for $11.37.5, an eighth of a dollar less than the verbal agreement. Buffett later admitted this was his biggest mistake. Instead of just selling and moving on, he got angry. He bought more shares, aggressively, until he had enough to take control of the company. Then he fired Stanton. He won the battle, but he'd bought a terrible business out of emotion, a move that he says cost him over $200 billion in opportunity cost over the following decades because he had to spend years untangling Berkshire from a sinking industry instead of just deploying that capital into good businesses from the start.
He calls Berkshire his 20-year-old mistake. But here's where it gets interesting, because even from a textile mill built on spite, Buffett engineered one of the greatest pivots in the history of capitalism. He didn't try to save the textile business. He repurposed it into a holding company. What does this mean?
Most companies make things and sell them. Berkshire doesn't make anything. It doesn't sell anything. Berkshire is essentially a corporation whose only purpose is to own other corporations. Think of it like this. If a normal company is a factory, Berkshire is the landlord who owns the factory, the warehouse next to it, the insurance company that covers both of them, the railroad that ships the goods, and a chunk of the bank that finances the whole operation. The structure looks like this. Berkshire Hathaway sits at the top. Underneath it are two buckets. Bucket 1, wholly owned subsidiaries. These are companies Berkshire bought outright. They don't trade on the stock market anymore. They just send profits up to Omaha. Bucket 2, equity holdings. These are companies where Berkshire owns a piece, a large chunk of publicly traded stock. Not the whole company, just enough to matter. In 2023, Berkshire's total revenue was $364 billion. Its net earnings were about $96 billion, and its total market cap crossed $1 trillion in August 2023, making it the first non-tech company to hit that mark. Berkshire makes money from the success of the stuff they invest in. The question is, how do you know what the right stuff is?
Warren Buffett's investing philosophy sounds almost too simple to work at this scale. He buys businesses with three qualities. First, a durable competitive advantage, what he calls a moat, something that protects the business from competition. Could be brand power, like Coca-Cola. Could be ability to control pricing, like GEICO. Could be explaining complex financial topics simply, like subscribing to this channel, something you should totally do, by the way. Second, honest and competent management. Buffett famously won't invest in a business he wouldn't be comfortable owning if the stock market shut down for 10 years. Third, a fair price. Not necessarily cheap, but fair relative to the long-term cash the business will generate. He also concentrates. Most fund managers diversify like crazy, 200 positions, 500 positions, spreading risk everywhere. Buffett thinks this is fucking insane. At one point, Berkshire's top 5 equity holdings represented over 75% of its entire investment portfolio. Apple alone was 50%. The other key strategy is time horizon. Buffett doesn't trade. His favorite holding period, famously, is forever. He's held Coca-Cola stock since 1988. He's held American Express since 1964. Holding forever means you don't pay capital gains taxes until you sell. It means you benefit from decades of compounding. $1 invested in Berkshire in 1965 is worth over $36,000 today. The S&P 500 over the same period, about $235. But the strategy only works if you have cash to deploy when opportunities hit. Of course, Berkshire has no shortage of cash from the 70-plus companies it owns.
Let's just do a quick tour of the empire, because it's genuinely wild. Fully owned. GEICO, the second largest auto insurer in America, with over 28 million policies. BNSF Railway, one of the largest freight railroads in North America, moving coal, grain, cars, and consumer goods across 32,500 miles of track. Berkshire Hathaway Energy, power utilities serving 12 million customers across Iowa, Nevada, Utah, etc. Is Candies, a California chocolate company that has generated over $2 billion in profits on an original $25 million investment. Pilot Flying J, the largest truck stop chain in America. Duracell, Dairy Queen, Clayton Homes, Fruit of the Loom. The list goes on and on. Partially owned. Apple, roughly 5.9%, worth approximately $135 billion at its peak. Bank of America, 13%. American Express, around 20%. Coca-Cola, 9.3%, held since 1988. Chevron, Occidental Petroleum.
When you add all of this up, Berkshire's investment portfolio alone was worth more than $300 billion as of late 2023. With such vast wealth and ties into so many industries, Berkshire would have a huge management team, right? Wrong. Berkshire Hathaway, a company with roughly 396,000 total employees across all the businesses it owns, is run from a headquarters in Omaha with 27 people. No corporate strategy team, no central HR. Buffett calls it radical decentralization. The CEOs of each Berkshire-owned business run their own companies almost completely autonomously. Buffett famously writes one letter per year to his managers, one, and it essentially says, run your business like you own it, because you basically do. He doesn't do quarterly earnings calls, he doesn't give guidance to Wall Street, he doesn't attend industry conferences or do press tours. He goes to Omaha. Once a year, he holds the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting in Omaha, Nebraska, what shareholders call Woodstock for capitalists. 40,000 people fly to Omaha every May, pay $17 to get in, and sit in an arena for 6 hours watching Buffett and Munger, before his death, answer questions. No prepared remarks, no slides, just Q&A. The logic behind all of this isn't laziness, it's a deliberate philosophy. Hire people you trust, give them autonomy, and get the fuck out of the way. Micromanagement kills the kind of people you actually want running your businesses. And that philosophy scales. But philosophy alone doesn't build a trillion-dollar company. Here's the actual secret.
2 words. Insurance float. When you buy car insurance, you pay premiums up front. The insurance company collects your money now and promises to pay out claims later if and when something bad happens. The time gap between collecting premiums and paying out claims can be months or years. That gap, that pool of money sitting in the middle, that's called float. For a normal insurance company, float is just a liability, money you're holding that you'll eventually owe. You park it in safe bonds and collect modest returns. For Warren Buffett, float is a free loan from the universe. Here's how it works at Berkshire. GEICO and Berkshire's other insurance businesses collect premiums. That float was approximately $169 billion. $169 billion that Berkshire is holding on behalf of future insurance claims. And Buffett invests it. He takes that float and puts it into Apple stock, railroad companies, energy utilities, etc. This is so powerful it almost feels illegal. It's not, but it completely reframes how Berkshire works. It's not a holding company that happens to own insurance businesses. It's an insurance business that uses its float to own everything else. The second engine is BNSF Railway. In 2009, Buffett bought Burlington Northern Santa Fe, BNSF, for $44 billion. He called it an all-in wager on the economic future of the United States. It was the largest acquisition in Berkshire history. BNSF is not glamorous. It hauls grain and coal across the middle of the country. It has 35,000 employees and moves roughly 10% of all intercity freight in America. And it is an absolute cash machine. In 2022, BNSF generated $5.9 billion in net earnings. It has the kind of competitive moat Buffett dreams about. If you wanted to compete with BNSF today, you literally cannot. Not because it's hard, but because the physical and regulatory conditions that made it possible to build it in the 1800s no longer exist. Between the insurance float and the railroad, you have the skeleton of a money machine unlike anything else in the world. Everything else, the Apple stake, the energy utility, the chocolate company, is built on top of those 2 pillars. But here's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. What happens when Warren Buffett is gone?
Warren Buffett is 94 years old. He has, by his own account, been preparing for succession for years. He named Greg Abel, currently vice chairman of non-insurance operations, as his designated successor. Abel is 61, experienced, well-liked inside Berkshire. On paper, he's qualified. But Berkshire was built around one person's brain. Buffett's ability to read an industry, value a business, hold conviction during crises, and resist the noise of Wall Street. Those aren't skills you can transfer in a memo. The structure does offer some protection. The fully owned subsidiaries largely run themselves. The equity portfolio is mostly passive. Berkshire doesn't have to do anything with its Apple shares. They just sit there compounding. The insurance float model is embedded in the business structure, not in Buffett's personality. But the judgment calls, when to buy, when to hold cash, when to be aggressive during a crisis, those came from Buffett. In 2008, when the financial system was melting down, he deployed $15.6 billion in a matter of weeks into Goldman Sachs, GE, and others at terms that were extraordinarily favorable. That kind of move requires conviction that most investors, regardless of their credentials, simply don't have. When Charlie Munger died in November 2023, Buffett wrote simply, "Berkshire could not have been built to its present status without Charlie's inspiration, wisdom, and participation." There will never be another Buffett-Munger. The question is whether the machine they built is strong enough to run without them. The honest answer is probably yes, but not as well. The moats are real. The float is real. The railroad is real. The culture of decentralization and long-term thinking is mostly real. Berkshire will almost certainly continue to be a very good company after Buffett. But the best version of Berkshire Hathaway, the one that turned $1 into $36,000 over 60 years, was inseparable from one person's mind.
So let's bring it back to where we started. How does a company make $1 trillion without selling a single product? It becomes the owner of everything. It collects insurance premiums and invests them before they ever have to be paid out. It builds a railroad in the middle of the country that nobody can replicate. It buys the best businesses it can find, pays a fair price, and simply waits. It does this with 27 people and an $8 breakfast at McDonald's. The irony is that the most complex financial empire in the world is built on the simplest idea imaginable. Own great things, be patient, don't do stupid stuff. Berkshire Hathaway is proof that sometimes the boring answer is the right one. If you want to learn about the exact opposite situation, the type of investing that makes Buffett cry, check out my video, The Biggest Financial Mistake Ever Made.